A pleasant good morning to you all. Hello, Heldy. Hello, Tuttle. Hello, Janelle. Hello, Taylor B. Hello, Sam. Hello, Jamie. Good morning to you all. Welcome in Tuesday edition. Is that what today is? Today's the Tuesday edition? Yeah, Tuesday edition of TDN Daily. Teams most likely to go worst to first in their division in 2023. And we have recently done the teams most likely to repeat as division winners in 2023. We did that on a Friday free-for-all. I think it was last week we did our teams to never win a Super Bowl, ranking them of who's most likely to win a Super Bowl next. We did that, and then I woke up this morning and said, well, we haven't done the worst to first show. I checked with our resident TDN Daily historians, checked in with Heldy, checked in with Sam, checked in with Bailey, and we got the all clear that we have not done this show. So that is the show that we are going to do here today. What's up, Lance? How are you today? And so that is what we are going to focus on here today on the show. So I've got the list. It's ready to go, 1 through 8. And we are going to get into the show in just a second. I'm just setting up a couple more things here on my end just so we are good to go. All right, the list is open. Sportsnet, I got some bad news for you. I got some terrible news for you. Carolina not eligible to go worst to first because they are not the team that finished last in the division. I hate to be that guy that ruins your fun here, but based on tiebreakers, they finished second. Falcons finished in last, so the Panthers not eligible to go from worst to first for us today. And I hate to be the one that breaks that news to you here to start the show, but I do have to let you know that they are not eligible for this list. But all right, let's go to the full screen and get this show on the road. I will start recording for the podcast audience. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Hope you're all having a fantastic start to your Tuesday. Let's press the record button and get this thing started. And welcome into the Tuesday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you here once again on the show. Hope everybody is having a fantastic start to their Tuesday. We've got a fun one for you, as always, in store on the show today. It's another list. We're not doing our positional rankings list, but we are continuing somewhat of a series that we've been doing here over the last couple of weeks. It was a few weeks ago on a Friday free-for-all that we went through and looked at teams most likely to repeat as divisional champs in 2023. So we took all 8 divisional winners and ranked them on the probability that we thought they could repeat as divisional champs in 2023. It was last week on the show that we looked at all the teams that have not won a Super Bowl yet, and we ranked the likelihood that they would win a Super Bowl next. And so today on the show, we do the tried and true. Happens every single year. Every single media entity talks about it. Every single media entity does a list on it. So we are joining the fray. We are doing our list here today on the show of the teams most likely to go worst to first. So teams that finished last in their divisions a year ago, we are going to rank the likelihood that they are going to be able to turn things around, do a complete 180 from 2022 to 2023 and win the division in 2023. So we've got 8 teams to rank here on the list. The chat already talking about some teams here before we get started. But just to set the stage, here are the 8 teams that we have to rank in 2023. I will tell you the team and their record from last year to set the base. We've got the New York Jets at 7-10. We've got the Cleveland Browns at 7-10. We've got the Houston Texans at 3-13. We have the Denver Broncos at 5-12. Those are your 4 representatives from the AFC. Over in the NFC, we've got the Washington Commanders at 8-1. We've got the Chicago Bears at 3-14. We've got the Atlanta Falcons, who ended up being in last based on the tiebreakers. The Saints and Panthers all had the same record as the Falcons. They were 7-10. And we've got the Arizona Cardinals at 4-13. So I think early takeaways, only one team with a record at 500 or better, that being the Washington Commanders at 8-1, and 2 teams that only won 3 games a year ago in Houston and Chicago. So those are the 2 big takeaways that I have from just looking at this list ahead of time. Now, I've already ranked them. I've gone from 8 to 1. And I know everybody loves on the show when we do it in reverse order, when we do lists like this. So that's exactly what we are going to do. But before, let's shout out some people in the chat who have already made their claims. Trevor says, number 1, Bears going full 2022 Jags. Put your bets down now to make some good money. Lance Sanderson says the only way Denver can go worst to first is if Mahomes disappears to another planet. And Janelle says Atlanta has the best chance, in my opinion. Jets and Bears are probably second. So those some early thoughts from the live YouTube chat before we get into it. And we will start from the back, and I think we will start with the team that is the easiest team for me to rank here in terms of teams most likely to go worst to first. I have the Arizona Cardinals here at slot number 8. Now, new head coach, new general manager, completely reshaping this roster. And oh, by the way, they're not going to have Kyler Murray for some period of time in 2023. And so it's going to be almost impossible for them to turn things around quick enough. Doesn't mean they're not on the right track. Doesn't mean that 2023 can't set them on a good course to turn things around. It's just, I don't think it's very likely for them to do so in 2023 because the expectation is for Kyler to miss a month, 2 months of the season. And so if you're talking about Kyler Murray missing anywhere from 4 to potentially upwards of 8 games at a minimum for the Cardinals in 2023, I don't think they're good enough outside of Kyler Murray to be able to kind of weather the storm and then for Kyler to come back and hit the ground running. I mean, the guy did have ACL surgery, and we know how mobile of a quarterback he is. And so the injury might impact him a little bit more than it would some other players just based on how much he moves around in the pocket. And so even if you do bring him back, how long does it take him to get back to full Kyler Murray level of play? Does it even happen in 2023? So when you add all that up, even if he does come back, what version is he going to be truly 100%? And so those are questions that I have for the Arizona Cardinals. And so for them, the fact that they're not going to have their starting quarterback for at least some level of time, they go number 8 on this list. Number 7 for me, it's a team that new head coach, new quarterback. The Houston Texans for me are number 7. And look, I like a lot of what Houston has done. I love the DeMeco Ryans hire. I love what they did in the draft. I love the young core that they're building. I think they have a pretty decent offensive line. I'm a huge fan of Dameon Pierce. I will continue to say their wide receiver room is better than people give them credit for. They've got some young building blocks on defense. There's a lot that if we did a deep dive, and we just did a show about the Houston Texans, which I know everybody here listening in the live YouTube chat would love, we would like a lot of where this team is going. We would like a lot about the trajectory that this team is on to find long-term success. Is it going to mean 2023 success? No. I still think they're behind the 8 ball defensively. I still think they need a lot of work there. I still think they need some help in the wide receiver room. I still think the offensive line does have some holes. CJ Stroud is a rookie, and so there is a ceiling, I think, on what we can expect from him in 2023. We do have a younger coaching staff that is making their debut as a coaching staff together, so there's going to be some bumps in the road there as well. And listen, the team won 3 games a year ago. They didn't infuse that much talent to, I think, completely turn it around. And so while I like a lot of what Houston's doing, when I look at being able to go from worst to first, the Cardinals and the Texans were 2 teams that I immediately put at the bottom. Not because I don't think there's an opportunity within the division, and that'll be a theme that'll emerge a little bit later on, that I think some divisions are open to where teams might be a little bit higher on the list. But just because I think talent-wise they're behind the 8 ball, and they are probably a year or 2 away from being in this conversation. Number 6 for me is probably where we're going to start to have the most debate. I have the Washington Commanders listed at number 6. And I know they are a team that went 8-1 a year ago, and they were right there in the mix in the division. Again, the Giants made the playoffs at 9-7, so they weren't that far off of what was a playoff spot in the NFC. But if you're asking me to bet on Sam Howell in his first full season as the starter, and I love the hire of Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator. I really do, and I think that's going to really get this team on a good track offensively. But you're asking me to buy in to Sam Howell as basically a rookie, played in 1 game last year, so his first year as a starter. You're asking me to buy in to Sam Howell and that team being able to surpass the Giants, to surpass the Cowboys, and to surpass the Eagles. That is a huge mountain, a huge uphill battle, I think, for them to climb. So this is not a disbelief in the Washington Commanders as a football team in terms of talent. I believe in a lot of the coaching. But when you look at the quarterback that they are going to put out on the field in 2023, you're asking me to believe that Sam Howell is going to be able to overcome the Giants, who I think are going to be just as good in terms of competitiveness as they were in 2023. The Dallas Cowboys, who I think are going to be just as good, if not better, in terms of their competitiveness in 2023. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who, if you've been following the positional breakdown series that we've been doing on this show, the Philadelphia Eagles, on a regular basis, find themselves inside the top 5. Their average ranking, and I removed the linebackers because it was the only group that they actually ranked low. But if you took linebackers out, right, which was their lowest rated group so far, and then we did safeties and they were even lower. But if you took linebackers out, this was a team that on average had a top 4 rank at any of their positions. That's how good this team is built. So I think you're just asking me to buy into a huge mountain for this team to overcome, and I just can't necessarily get there for 2023. So I have the Washington Commanders at number 6, and I've got the Chicago Bears at number 5. And the reason why I have the Chicago Bears at number 5 is not because I don't think that the division's not up for grabs. I do. I think Minnesota isn't going to be as good as they were last year. I don't think they're going to be able to win as many games. They went 13-4 last year. I am a big believer in what the Lions are in 2023. You guys know hashtag our Lions here on the show, right? It's kind of the brand. I think Green Bay is going to take a step backwards, obviously, without Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know what they are. But there's a reason that the Chicago Bears were 3-14 a year ago. And I don't know if they've improved enough in that regard. I still have a lot of question marks. I'm not fully bought in to the Justin Fields hype train that has left the station this offseason. I like Justin Fields. I think he's on a good track. I think this big, massive leap that people are expecting from Justin Fields here in 2023, I'm not willing to fully get on board with that. And so I think the talent is what holds me back from being able to put the Bears up a little bit more on this list. So I have them at number 5. Janelle says, I think the Broncos have a harder road than the Bears just because of Kansas City. I have the Denver Broncos number 4 on this list. And it's because I caution against this idea that the Denver Broncos are going to automatically be exactly what they were last year because of how bad Russ was. And I also strongly caution against this idea that Sean Payton is going to walk into that building and completely turn things around. I think the truth for the 2023 Broncos lies somewhere in the middle of those two statements. Of they're going to be as bad as they were in 2023, and Russ in particular is going to be as bad as he was in 2023. And the other end of the coin being Sean Payton's going to come in there, Russ is going to be cooking it up again. Look out, this is going to be everything Denver thought it was when they traded for him a year ago. Like, I caution against both ends of that spectrum. I think those are the extremes. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think they're going to be improved. I think they're going to be a better team than they were last year. They were 5-12 a year ago. Do I think they can probably threaten 10-7 like the Chargers were a year ago? Yes. But again, the thing that stops me from being able to push them higher up this list is they still got Kansas City they got to compete with in the division. They've got the Chargers, who I think are going to be good. And so that uphill battle is a bit of a climb for me. So the reason why the Broncos are in front of the Bears is because I think the Broncos are more talented. And so because of that, I think you're going to be able to win more games. But I still think there are the uphill battles because, again, this is still the Chiefs division until further notice. And so I have the Denver Broncos at number 4. I do think they'll be able to very quickly hop the Raiders. I think the Raiders are a team that's rebuilding and a team that is not going to be very, very good in 2023. I've got the New York Jets at number 3. And listen, for all the talk there's been about the trade of Aaron Rodgers and what that move means for the New York Jets and what stratosphere that it puts them in and Super Bowl contenders and legitimate threats in the AFC, all of that stuff. This team finished last in this division a year ago. They were 7-10. And the only thing they changed was the quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean that can't make them a better football team. It absolutely can, because Aaron Rodgers is better than what they had in 2023. But they haven't beaten New England in 7 years. They still have to go through Buffalo for this division. I still think Miami is better than them. In terms of pure talent on paper, I think they're only the 3rd best team in the division. I think they're behind both Buffalo and Miami. Now, can they win the division? Yes. I'm the first person to say I don't think the Bills are going to win 13 games like they were a year ago. I do think the Bills are better than the Jets, but I think the Bills do take a step back this year. Can Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets waltz through that door? Sure. But in comparison to all the other teams that we talked about so far, like look at Houston, look at the Commanders, look at the Bears, the Cardinals, all these other teams that we talked about. They don't have what the Jets have in their division that they're looking up at, which is 2 teams that made the playoffs a year ago, 2 teams that people feel that, if everything goes correctly, if everybody's healthy, mainly a Tua question, these are 2 teams that are legitimate threats in the AFC. That's a tough uphill battle for the Jets to climb. And so I think they're improved, and I think they're better than all the teams that we rank behind them. And so that's what puts them up here at number 3, is I just think they're too talented to be lower on this list. But to be in the top 2 spots, I think there's got to be a real clear case that I can make for you that you can win the division. And I just don't know if I can very clearly make that case for the New York Jets when they are behind both the Dolphins and the Bills currently in their division. Number 2 is where I have the Cleveland Browns. And this may be unpopular, but I think if Deshaun Watson, and I'm the first person to say that I don't think this is possible, that I'm not, until I see and I'm not on board with this. And so maybe the thing we do is we flip the Jets and the Browns here as a quick aside. But when I look at the Cleveland Browns, I look at a team that is incredibly well built on the offensive line, has one of the best running backs in the game, has one of the best receiving cores in the game. It's got a pretty good edge group, has pretty good corners overall. They've got really good depth at a lot of key positions. If Deshaun Watson is close to the 2020 version of Deshaun Watson, it doesn't have to be the 2020 version of Deshaun Watson. If he's just close to that version of himself on the football field, then they are a team that can absolutely compete with the Cincinnati Bengals for this division. They're talented enough to do so. I think they'd be better than the Steelers. They were only 2 games back of the Steelers a year ago. The Ravens, I love the Ravens. I love a lot of what they're doing, and I think they're going to be a threat. But for me, there are some question marks of this new offense, what it looks like. The receiving core is still got a lot of question marks. So there are some things that we can look at from this team and say, are we really sure that Baltimore is a team that we can buy in on? So I think there's a good chance that Cleveland, if they get things on track, they could threaten for this division. And then number 1, I have the Atlanta Falcons, because this was a team that finished 1 game out of the division a year ago. They are improved. They are a better football team than they were a year ago. Made great investments on the defensive side of things. Tampa went 8-9, won the division with Tom Brady. They've taken a step back in terms of where they're going to be. Carolina, new coaching staff, rookie quarterback. I still think they're in the mix. But if you're telling me which team has the best path to be able to go worst to first, it's Atlanta. Look at the teams above them. The Saints, brand new quarterback down there in New Orleans. How quickly does everything gel? Carolina, rookie quarterback, brand new coaching staff. What does that look like? Tampa, I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in all of football. So in terms of an absolute clear pathway, it's Atlanta. I also think Atlanta is improved from a year ago. We add Bijan to this team. We have all the dollars that were infused defensively. They went out and traded for Jonnu Smith to be able to add another pass catcher to this offense. Like, they've done a lot that I think allows them to be in the conversation. And so we've got the Falcons at number 1, and the full list here now that we've read it: Arizona 8, Houston 7, Washington 6, Chicago 5, Denver 4, the Jets 3, Cleveland 2, and Atlanta 1. Taylor B says, I'd swap the Jets with the Browns. Both divisions have three very talented teams and one that will never be bad. Watson versus Rodgers is the difference to me. Yeah, I think it's fair to evaluate both the Browns and the Jets in very similar lights, in that they are looking up at 2 teams above them that are going to be pretty good. For the Browns, it's the Bengals and the Ravens, and for the Jets, it's the Bills and the Dolphins. And I think in both cases, you have one team that's clearly kind of defined in a tier of the top tier of the AFC, the Bills and the Bengals, and then a team right behind both of those teams that are viewed very highly in that tier and could potentially be in that tier, which would be the Dolphins and the Ravens. If we want to maybe flip the Browns and the Jets because we feel like Rodgers is the difference maker, it's not like Rodgers had a great year last year. One of the worst years of his career statistically. He is a little bit older, and so I think there are some similar question marks. I felt like I didn't want to put the Jets number 2 just in terms of a bias, but if we want to flip the Jets and the Browns, I can get there if you want to make Rodgers a difference maker and you think, and I don't necessarily disagree, and I think you maybe have kind of convinced me of an argument that I've already kind of made, is that I have some questions about what Deshaun's going to be in 2023. And I think Taylor B says he was still better than Watson. And yeah, I think I would right now take Aaron Rodgers over Deshaun Watson until Deshaun proves me otherwise. So we'll make that change. We'll make that flip. And so we have the Jets at number 2 behind the Falcons. We have the Browns at number 3. Janelle says, I agree with the list except the Bears and the Broncos. I can see a path for the Bears to do it. Fields learns how to throw to his own team. Lions lay an egg. Vikings revert to the norm. Broncos not overtaking the Chargers and the Chiefs. Yes, pathway probably much easier for the Bears. Vikings are not going to be good as they were a year ago, 13 wins. They won like every close game that was on their schedule a year ago. I think the Lions are going to be improved. I don't think the Packers are going to be as good. I can get on board with flipping the Bears and the Broncos. I think they're close. I think they're tiered very close to each other in terms of how I feel about them. I do think the Broncos are the more talented team, and that's what initially led me to putting them in front. But I think if you just look at strictly competition, right, the Broncos are going to have to get through the Chargers and the Chiefs, like we mentioned. The Bears don't have that level of competition, and this isn't a talent contest. This is a who's most likely to go from worst to first in their division, and the complexity of your division also matters. Now, sometimes your talent can completely override the complexity of your division in the case of the Jets, because I think the Jets are a more talented team than their 7-10 record was a year ago, and I think they're good enough to compete for the division. Whereas the Broncos, is their talent so much so that they're better than 5-12? I don't know. They're probably a 10-9 win team. That's like 4 or 5 wins from what they were, and even that wouldn't be enough to win the division. Where the Jets were 7-10, and I think they were probably closer to a 9-win team a year ago, and they added Aaron Rodgers. Probably gets them close to 10 or 11. You think the Bills take a step back, boom, you can find the case. You can make an argument that they're there. So we'll make the flip, and we've got the Cardinals 8, Texans 7, Commanders 6, Broncos 5, Bears 4, Browns 3, Jets 2, and the Falcons 1. That is our list of teams most likely to go worst to first in their own divisions in 2023. Taylor B says the Bears defense really worries me against those offenses in their division. Don't say that too loudly. Bailey will come in here and tell you that that's why he's right and I'm wrong on how the Bears are going to operate in 2023. But all right, that is going to do it for us here on this edition of TDN Daily. Another list for you here on the show. A little bit of a different list, but I thought one that would be very interesting to kind of explore here on the show. Teams most likely to go worst to first in their division in 2023. We appreciate you making this show a part of your day. While you're waiting for us for tomorrow's show, in the meantime, could you please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast with a friend, catch the video version on YouTube. You can catch us live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube channel, The Draft Network. You can also catch all the VODs over there as well. And on YouTube Music, you can listen to the podcast. You'll get the pre-show, the post-show, and the recording of the show, and you get the video version there as well. So you can catch that if you are a user of YouTube Music. Just search up TDN Daily, and it will populate right there in the feed. So that is going to do it for us here on the podcast edition of the show. Hope everybody has a great rest of their Tuesday, and we will talk with you all tomorrow. Lance, I know you said good show, but don't go anywhere. We're into the post-show, the special feature for the live YouTube listeners of the chat. Don't go anywhere. Things get off the rails here very, very quickly. Sometimes we continue talking about the topic of the show. Sometimes we sidebar into conversations about my favorite sports, or yesterday we discussed board games. So you never know what could happen here when you get to the post show. What does everybody want to talk about in the post show? Feels like the list kind of sorted itself out when we made those 2 changes. I felt pretty confident that no one would disagree with Atlanta at number 1, and that no one would really disagree with kind of the bottom 3 teams. But it was that middle kind of chunk that I had a tough time with. But what does everybody else want to talk about? What do you guys want to talk about for the pre-show? Or the post-show, I should say. What else? I flashed a 5.10 while climbing yesterday. Janelle, I have no idea what that means. Is there a more pitiable sports franchise than the Washington Wizards? All right, so now we're veering off into another category here. Is there a more pitiable sports franchise than the Washington Wizards? I mean, the Orlando Magic probably would like to have a word, right? If we're just talking about basketball, they would probably like to have a word. In baseball, the Oakland A's are probably pretty pitiable. Or pitiable, I should say, is the word that you used. Detroit Pistons in recent years, yeah. Hell, the Orlando Magic always have a future, and then they trade the players as part of the future. The Oakland A's, I think, would be a team that I would mention. Lance, the Colorado Rockies, Lance, it's not a bad shout. I think the A's are more pitiable than the Magic. Have had better success in the past than the Wizards. Just so you guys know, there's like a big on my Streamlabs where I record the show from. In the bottom right corner of the live chat, there is a reaction button, and it has a big heart. And so sometimes part of your guys' comments get cut off, and so I can't see the context sometimes. So that's what Taylor B. I didn't know if it was in the past blank or like a number of years, and I couldn't see. Oakland A's, Coyotes, and Wizards are probably the most pitiable. Yeah, the Coyotes are one that is probably a decent shout. I'm a Jaguars, Magic, and Gator fan. I am the most pitiable franchise in sports. Yeah, Taylor, that's rough. That's rough. What do we think? To get us back on football for just a second, because There wasn't enough to do a whole show on this, but it's a pretty good post-show topic to have a conversation with you all about. What do we feel about this comment from Dalvin Cook that he would love to team up with DeAndre Hopkins? And the quote, if you didn't see it, was, if we end up on the same roster, that would be something epic for the NFL. That type of stuff doesn't happen this late in the free agency process, does it? Like, I can't remember an example of a time in which like two major free agents like this show up this late in the process and then like end up together. What roster can do it? Well, that's the thing too, is like Dalvin Cook apparently wants $1 bajillion, give or take, right? Like he's not going to take a pay cut. And it's like, Dalvin, if you're interested in teaming up with DeAndre Hopkins, you're probably going to have to take a pay cut to make it work. What roster can do it? Now, Taylor B., do you ask that from a financial perspective, or do you ask that from a teams that have the holes? Because, like, I'll throw a team out there. They've got $20 million in cap space, so they could probably do this. Is it out of the realm of possibility for Jerry Jones to be like, hey, DeAndre Hopkins, come join CeeDee Lamb, and we have a wide receiver too. Hey, Dalvin Cook, come join this running back room and join Tony Pollard? Is that really out of the realm of possibility? I mean, this whole idea, I think, is pretty ridiculous. But let's just evaluate it for a second. Let's live in a world where they are going to team up. Is Dallas not an option? Sam Teet says, so D-Hop is looking at where New England, Tennessee, and all the winning AFC teams. How many of those teams actually want a running back? Maybe Buffalo. Yeah, Buffalo could make some sense. The Chiefs don't really make some sense. I know they're a team that's interested in DeAndre Hopkins. Tennessee doesn't need a running back. I mean, New England, they have Ramondre Stevenson, and I would make the argument that Ramondre Stevenson is good enough to be their starting running back, and they don't need to explore evaluating. They need to explore adding Dalvin Cook to their roster, would be my take. But the Ravens, if they could, what kind of cap space do the Ravens have? Ravens have $9.9 million in cap space. I don't know if they'd be able to pull it off. I don't have in front. I mean, I'll pull it up to see if I can very quickly figure something out. The Browns have $16 million in cap space. They could probably get it done. But they just, like, I mean, I don't think teams think this way, but, like, you just traded for Elijah Moore. You drafted Cedric Tillman. You have Amari Cooper. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like, that would be a misappropriation of your assets if you're then just going to go out and sign DeAndre Hopkins. Any team would if they could, but no contenders could afford it. I mean, teams with the most cap space are the Bears, the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Colts, and the Jets. Lions and Cowboys. All of those teams have $20 million or more in cap space right now. So let's, the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, I don't think they're going to be really interested in having Dalvin Cook. The Jets, I mean, the Jets reportedly were kind of tinkering around with the idea of adding Dalvin Cook. We know they were interested in adding a wide receiver with Odell Beckham Jr. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I would be shocked, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But a lot of that $23.1 million in cap space, I think they're saving for a Q extension based on whatever his number is going to look like, and then a Rodgers restructure, because they still have not done or if they've done it, they haven't announced it. We don't know the numbers on Rodgers' contract restructure, and like for the moment, Rodgers is. I need to find Aaron. He's down here very low on the list. Aaron's 1.2 against the cap here in 2023, and he counts for $107.6 million against the cap in 2024. So they still need to work out whatever that long-term deal looks like. The Colts at $23.3 million. I don't think D-Hop would go there. I don't think it makes sense. The Panthers. Now hold on a second. You want to talk about a pair of moves that could potentially get me on board with the Carolina Panthers, even more so than I already am, because I've talked myself into thinking that the Panthers can make the playoffs this year. You want me to believe that the Panthers might be able to win the division. You had DeAndre Hopkins to Adam Thielen and Terrence Marshall Jr. Now we got a pretty good wide receiver room. Dalvin Cook's a nice addition, but they signed Miles. They signed Miles Sanders. Taylor B., what would a Rodgers restructure look like? Is it saving money next year by paying more this year? Well, for the moment, let me go into the calculator here and see. They need to find his number in order to do it. They can't restructure. All of his money next year is guaranteed with the current contract. Like, it all gets guaranteed on February 10th. So by February 10th, all 107 of it, it's 107.5, and then it's a 50,000 workout bonus, and so it adds up to 107.6. It's all guaranteed by February 10th. These are the options that were in the Green Bay contract that the Jets need to pick up, by the start of the season, and so it's all kind of rolled into right now just what is a 2-year deal. What I think they'll do is they'll restructure it. They'll increase his cap number probably a little bit for 2023. They'll decrease it for 2024, and then they'll add like 2 years on it, 2025 and 2026, and then they may add, or maybe they'll add another year at 2025 and make it a 3-year deal that quote unquote that he'll play, and then they'll add 2 dummy years on the back end of it. So there'll be 5 years in total, and then that'll allow them to kind of spread whatever cap they want to have over the course of what would be 4 years at that point, is what I think it'll probably ultimately end up looking like. But we sit here on June 20th and it's still not done. So your guess is as good as mine as to what this is going to ultimately look like. But yeah, I think the Cowboys, and that's really about it, of a team that I think would make sense from a package deal perspective for Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins. I can't think of any other team that makes a ton of sense. Like, there's just no other team that I think has the wiggle room, the roster space, the need to be able to make it all make sense. So I think ultimately those guys will end up in 2 different places. All right, folks, that's going to do it. We've got coaching positional rankings on tomorrow's show. Head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, the evaluation points for those for each team. And so we'll rank the teams accordingly. Probably the head coach going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for some of these teams. But we'll see. The list has not been started yet, so we'll see how the process plays itself out here over the rest of today and then tomorrow morning when I put the finishing touches on the list like I normally do. So that's what we've got to look forward to on tomorrow's show, the last part of the positional ranking series. And then I think on Friday, I'll run all the numbers, and then we'll look at what our quote-unquote power rankings look like for all these teams entering the 2023 season, and we'll see how it all kind of pans out for us for the year. So that's what we've got to look forward to tomorrow. Appreciate everybody being here. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Tuesday, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.